Diane and I have curated, or as we put it, reprised, this 1974 exhibition in part of the galleries. Gabrielle and Denise Brown, director of the Leeway Foundation, have curated an exhibition of a new generation of artists who represent the changes that have taken place in the art world, moving from domination by white heteronormative males to an art world where women identifying gender nonconforming and Black, brown, indigenous, and other persons of color have moved to the center rather than working on the periphery. The artists will talk about their work, then we will have a discussion among the artists themselves, and finally, we will invite questions or comments from the floor. Please also note that we have published a catalog. Would you all hold up your catalogs, please? Or some of you hold up your catalogs. And the catalog provides a one-volume tutorial on the history of the enormous change that has taken place in the art world over the last 50 years. And we want to express our heartfelt thanks to Harriet Weiss, who has funded its publication. In alphabetical order, the first speaker is Diane Burko. And Diane graduated from Skidmore College with a BS in art history and painting and an MFA from the University of Pennsylvania. She was a professor for many years at the Community College of Philadelphia, but she's also been a visiting professor at many other institutions, including Princeton University and others. Burko has been in 100 exhibitions nationally and internationally and included in collections at the Art Institute of Chicago, many other art museums throughout the country. And she's had these fabulous residencies in the Arctic Circle, in Giverny, France, and most recently in Brazil's Amazon rainforest. She speaks all the time. She's the darling of the scientists who are working on climate change. She's their artist in residence, wherever they are meeting, and she speaks to them in ways that they say they cannot speak about climate change as effectively as she does, through her words and through her fabulous paintings. So I'm going to introduce Diane at the first, and then I will introduce the others as they speak. Diane, but before you speak, I do have a few slides that I wanted to show.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I just need three hands.
Can we turn the lights down? Yeah, can we turn the lights down for the slides? This is an imposition, this light. Lights? Lights down?
But nothing's happening. Claire, can you do something? I don't think I'm using the remote correctly.
Oh, the remote?
I can't make the remote move.
Well, you can see it goes along the whole thing. We're going to be sitting in front of it. That's better.
Am I not holding it right?
Oh, we got it switched off.
Oh, it got switched off. Okay, thank you. That was simple. Okay.
Are we obscuring the view?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that you move back just a little bit.
I mean, this is all about art and viewing, isn't it? Right.
But move where you can see yourselves. So this is a meeting here at Moore of the group of us in 1974, and you can see Diane leaning on her hand, and I'm looking over her shoulder, looking very solemnly. Okay, this is all we could publish in 1974. This was a brochure for the exhibition, of which you're going to see all the artists, or 78 of the 82 artists who were in this exhibition are on view today. And today we have this beautiful catalog where we've documented them a little bit more effectively. This is the inside of that brochure. Tells you what this is all about. Women artists then, intersectional artists now. This is the Future Is Us group who have mounted the exhibition that's outside in the galleries or in part of the galleries. And then this is typical of the only visual documentation that we have of that 1974 exhibition and programs. All of these contact sheets that are in our archives at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. So I thought you would just enjoy seeing a few of these images. And this, of course, is Judith Bernstein's Hairy Screw, which was centered out of that show. The director threatened to take the whole show down if we didn't remove this. And as she herself says, it worked in reverse. It started her visibility and helped her establish her career. So he achieved exactly the opposite of what he intended. And now let's have Diane Burko.
Is my microphone on? Okay, yeah. Could you go back to the one with all the clips, one? Yeah, I'd love to start here if I may, because there's history here that I think all of you would appreciate. There is Faith Ringgold. Okay, we all know who she is. There is Marcia Marcus. That's also Marcia Marcus. I saw Louise Bourgeois somewhere.
Over here, I think.
With her, or maybe it's not in this one, but here's Alice Neal. Okay, that might be Arlene Raven. I thought Louise Bourgeois was in one of these too. But anyway, they all were here. All these big names that we learn in art history today were here in Philadelphia 50 years ago. So it's kind of cool to go back to the archives and see all this. But this is just a little sampling. Okay, Judy, thank you. Okay.
Oopsie, I went the wrong way, sorry.
Okay. And I have one more historical slide image that I think you'll get a kick out of if I know how to do it. Yeah. I was very pregnant. So you have it, then and now. And what Judy asked us to do was just give 10 or 12 slides of our work. And being that most of us have been working for 50 years, you realize that's a hard kind of thing to do. But I'm just going to quickly run through some of them with you. Luckily, they have dates because they came from another PowerPoint, but not all of them do. So, you know, I'm going through the decades, basically. 70s, 80s, 90, my first residency in Giverny. Let's see what else we have. Big project on volcanoes, and I went all over the world. Thanks to Lee Alter, by the way. That was when she had the Leeway grants were for artists. It wasn't, you know, anything but that. And I just turned 50 and therefore got $50,000. And I was able to travel for 4 years to all these different sites. This is just one of them. Climate change became my passion about 20 years ago. And I thought this was a cool way to show you one of them because it was used by scientists to see if they could measure if it makes a difference. If a person sees a graph or they see a painting, do they respond differently about feelings about climate change? And guess what? They really do. It was, this article went all over. I mean, I've gotten more press on a scientific article than I've ever gotten on one of my shows. But it was published in Nature, and I'm very proud that this scientist asked to use my image, and it worked. because I always told her it does work, but I had no, I only had anecdotal information, so that was kind of nice. I started out with glaciers, and then I moved on to coral reefs. This was painting with that one was in a major show at American University, and then to my surprise, it was selected for the summer exhibition at the Royal Academy in 2022. It's big. Oh, by the way, it's really big. I'm going to go back to it because my artists in the audience will appreciate it. It's 96, well, it's 8 feet by 15 feet, and imagine the crate. It came in 3 parts, obviously. Okay. And this goes into the work I'm doing now, which is all about the rainforests of the world, the Amazon in particular, where I had this residency this summer. Whoops, and there we are. And I'm done. There's me in the jungle. Okay, thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Cynthia Carlson. And Cynthia moved to New York from Chicago in 1965 for her graduate studies. She's identified as one of the founders of the pattern and decoration movement. In addition, her work has a tactile quality, often from her use of non-art materials, including frosting. It also references popular culture and domesticity. In her 60-plus years as a professional artist, she has had one-person shows in many galleries nationwide, including the Marion Locks Gallery here in Philadelphia. Her work has been featured in numerous one-person museum exhibitions, including the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, as well as the Allen Memorial Art Museum in Oberlin, the Neuberger Museum of Art in Purchase, New York, and so many others. She's the recipient of Pollock Krasner Foundation Award, of a Rockefeller Foundation Residency Award at Bellagio, and several National Endowment for the Arts fellowships. Her work is represented in museum collections across the United States, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Guggenheim, the Brooklyn Museum, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, and others. She currently resides in New York City and upstate New York, as she says, with her husband and a cat. Okay, so
So you just want me to go through them and you'll talk?
Yeah, I'm not dating these or saying much about them.
you need to talk into your mic.
Oh, what's this then?
That is a mic.
And
All right, I'm not going to say things about the individual works.
Use mine.
All right.
and
See, we've got this all together. We rehearsed. Okay, I'm not going to say much about each individual thing, so it's very mixed. And the reason I'm doing that is because I've been a very eclectic artist, restless artist, changed a lot. If I were to have a retrospective of some kind, it would be like a big group show, because there are many different kinds of work. Some artists are able to sustain an idea, make it grow, make it vital throughout their career. I am not. I change and then agonize, and then change and then agonize. So, but this is the first show at the Morris Gallery when they started giving individual artists an exhibition. And it was based on the decorative Frank Furness decorations of the building. I said I wasn't going to do that.
You should when you want to.
Yeah, I will. Well, this is recent. This is what I'm doing now. It's shaped canvases. I mean, each installation, which I did for more than 10 years plus, on and on, mostly. And most of them were architectural, starting with the one at the Pennsylvania Academy, and being fortunate to have a lot of, I could keep going.
Oh, is that what that means? Okay, I'll go when you tell me.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
A lot of interesting architectural spaces, like the Oberlin Museum and like the Pennsylvania Academy and several others.
Poke me again. Oops.
Oh, this is a recent drawing, or work on paper.
How big is it?
It's about maybe 36 by 20 or something. That's the one sculpture I did, which was at Art Park, a gingerbread house.
Where was it?
At Art Park in Buffalo, New York. They had, maybe they still have, but they had a program where they invited artists to come every year and do projects, and I chose to do. Actually, I went there and I was very impressed with the fun everybody was having. And a lot of, making art during the day and fooling around and drinking at night, and that was all very appealing to me. But it was all sculptural work, and so I was trying to figure out what to do, and because I was making paintings which were very heavily impastoed, I was using a cake froster, I thought, ha, a gingerbread house.
What about this one? I was curious about this one.
Well, it's a drawing. And it has outside pieces which refer, humor has always been a part of my work.
You're kidding.
For whatever reason. I'm about to embark on some black paintings because I just had a opening at a museum and everyone was carrying on about how cheerful my work was. And I said, I don't think that's really a compliment. So I'm going to start some black paintings now.
And I think that's the last one.
Good,
Okay. Go to the next. There we go. Okay.
Joyce,
Thank
you can do your
Cynthia. Okay, our next speaker is Joyce Kozloff, who was a founder of the 1970s pattern and decoration movement. And during the 1980s, she created public commissions in the US and abroad, executed in ceramic tile and or glass and marble mosaic. By the 1990s, maps had become the foundation for Kozloff's art, structures into which she inserted the role of cartography in human knowledge and as not very good at turning pages, and as an imposition of imperial will. Recently, she completed public pieces at the 86th Street and Central Park West.
Judy, we don't want the long biographies.
Oh, wait a
'cause
minute, Diane.
She
Just a
doesn't
minute.
want it. She just told you.
Okay. Well, let's say that she has done a lot of installations in many places across the United States, and she is represented by the D.C. Moore Gallery, where she has a show at the moment.
I put in this slideshow, selecting over 50, 60 years or something, large pieces that would be visible. So that's a painting from 1977, and it's 5 by 16 feet, and I don't want to get into complex conversation about it, but it was based on travel in North Africa and things that I saw and the way I saw them, the different viewpoints moving through the streets. Okay, I'm going to move on.
Go ahead.
What?
Just click it.
Yeah. And this is an installation I did in the late 70s. When I moved off the canvas, I was talking all the time about breaking down the hierarchy between high art and craft, and I was just taking ideas from craft media and putting them into painting. So it seemed like it was time to break down those hierarchies in a more literal way. And this is a floor piece made of hundreds of pieces of hand-painted ceramic tiles. And the fabrics were printed here in Philadelphia at the Fabric Workshop. They're silk screened on silk. And I called it An Interior Decorated. And this is my first public art piece. The Harvard Square subway station in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It was installed in 1985. And it's 8 by 86 feet, and it's called New England Decorative Arts, and has different sections with motifs, quilts and bowsprits and stencils, gravestones. I don't think I'm showing you any details. It's currently a ruin, and that's another story. This is another public project in Pasadena, California. Ceramic tile, and I worked in Topanga Canyon with a group of hippie ceramists making this piece. This is a piece from the late 80s called Vietnam in Memory. I wanted to make a piece about, no, this is from the late 90s. I don't even remember these dates, but I wanted to integrate into this collage I had in my studio that wasn't successful some material I had picked up. I traveled to Vietnam, and I juxtaposed it with films from those years of the war and what kinds of imagery were in our faces. And it has a 7-hour audio tape, which nobody ever listened to.
What's on the tape?
I read a book called The Horrors of War by a writer named Bao Ninh about being a soldier in the war. It's a great book, very, very sad book. And I was going to excerpt from it, but I couldn't figure out how, so I just read the whole thing. And this piece I did in 99-2000. It's called Targets, and every section is an aerial view of a part of the world that the U.S. bombed between 1945 and the year 2000 when I finished it. It has 24 sections, and it's based on tactical U.S. government tactical pilotage charts. I think and this isn't one from the early part of this century. I think I'm talking too long.
No.
Anyway, it was a widely published aerial view of the world, which showed which parts were most brightly lit, which were the northern hemispheres. And I overlaid it with a cosmological 1600 cosmological chart of the heavens, as if you were looking down through the stars to the earth. This is another one from that period, but this piece is called G's, and it's 12 by 12 feet. It's painted on panels. I've been doing work from maps for more than 30 years, and I approach it with different kinds of maps. This is based on a famous medieval map, the Ebsdorf map, which was in a monastery in Germany, and it was destroyed during World War II in an Allied bombardment. But there were pictures of it, and the body of Christ is embedded into it, the head, the feet, and the hands. And I copied it, and then I started layering images of Christ that I found online, everything from high art to kitsch. And this is a public artwork I did I installed it about 5 years ago in a subway station in New York, 96 and Central Park West. And it's an aerial view. I've been using Google Earth and of the intersection between Central Park and Central Park West, if you know New York, through different seasons. And these are very recent paintings. I did a series based on Civil War battle maps with viral outbreaks during the pandemic. And this is the Battle of Vicksburg. And then this very recent work I'm showing right now in New York is of parts of the world that are currently zones of conflict and war, with representations of the culture that is being destroyed in these wars.
Hold on to your.
Do I get away with your not saying anything? This isn't working?
I think it was already on.
It is working.
Can you hear me?
Let me introduce you first.
Okay.
Okay, so our next speaker is Barbara Zucker, who is a sculptor. She lives and works in Vermont. And she's also a writer. and she's written articles and essays for Art News, Art in America, Art Journal, you name it, in the art world journalism field, and she has written for it. She's the co-founder with the late Susan Williams of AIR Gallery in New York, the first women's gallery in the United States. She is also a professor emerita at the University of Vermont, where she chaired the art department for 5 years, and insisted that the art of women be included in the department's art history program at the time when none was then represented. Her work has been shown widely in the US and abroad in many locations, and particularly in some of the big pattern and decoration exhibitions that have been mounted in the last couple of years. So I'm going to turn now to Barbara.
How do you switch the slide?
It'll go on automatically. They're
The
switching it.
slides will?
Just talk.
Really?
Yeah, just
Okay.
talk.
Next to you.
Okay, so I just picked a bunch of things that don't particularly make sense chronologically, but I hope you'll bear with me. These are called advancing forms, and I think it's from 1974. I was trying at the time in the early 70s to find a new way of making things that really didn't count on the male canon of heavy steel. You can't hear me? How about now? Yay. Okay, so anyway, I was trying to find a way to create mass without doing something singularly massive. And so I worked with aggregates, as many small forms as I could, to create mass in a different way. I also stopped looking at the kind of art that I thought I should be making, i.e. the big steel heavy stuff, and I started looking at other ways of thinking about art. I looked to Asian art, to Japanese and Chinese works that were benevolent symbols, for example, and that would be beneficial, things that were positive. So why is this going to change? And this is one of those pieces that was in the show here, which I had forgotten, excuse me. And this is called Dark Huts. It was shown first at Sarah Lawrence College, I think in 1974, and they were earth-colored, kind of, again, like these advancing weird things that were neither mushroom, nor head, nor, excuse me, penis, or anything else that you can imagine. Okay, next, please. I also was part of a performance group for several years that was founded by the late Marcia Tucker and Tim Yan. And every Sunday night, a bunch of us would be sort of tortured and blessed by performing with each other, by taking risks with each other. And ultimately, we performed at the kitchen, and one of the pieces that was performed was mine. It was called Ace. I wrote to the Ace company, the Ace Bandage Company. I probably lied, and I got really big bandages, and we sewed them up. And these people came on the stage garbling and moaning and making noises that represented my angst, my neuroses, my anxiety. They wiggled on. Marcia tied them up, and when they were all tied, they stopped speaking, and then they were silent and they wiggled off. It was kind of like a way for me to sort of get rid of, to expunge my neuroses. Has that ever changed? No, but I keep trying. I continue to keep trying. And incidentally, let's see, the one that only has a little eye peeking out, that's my husband. He was naked except for the eye, because they were all given bandages and told, dress yourselves as you wish. Arlene Slavin, who is in this exhibition here, the rather elegant-looking woman, second to the right, she looked chic. Other people looked different ways. Elka Salmon, Nancy Franklin, Michael Kortler, David something I can't remember, Kent Hines, and Tim Yan. Next. So at that same performance, I had a piece called Signifying. Signifying, I wanted colors to have meaning and movement to have meaning. And so this expression was called piling. I dyed colors for each person. Everyone was wearing a sort of different color, top and bottom, and they piled They did other things. They ran, they kissed, they bit themselves. And this was just one example of that performance. I think it was 1976. Next, please. Bad slide, pardon me. It's what I had. It's a detail of a piece I did in 1977-78 called Harlequin Poles. It was aluminum that had been not powder coated, anodized aluminum and sort of metal flake paint. This is just a detail of that piece. In that work and subsequent work that I made in the late 70s, I was trying to get color up off the floor and into space. I was trying to describe color in a way that you wouldn't ordinarily see it. I was also using a ruffle because I felt that the ruffle around the neck of the bard or the joker in medieval times protected him from being killed because he could say whatever he wanted without dying. I also, again, was looking at these non-Western sources, looking at the fan, the Japanese fan, and what did that mean? And so it was kind of, oh, and there was one other thing. I used to take the subway, and there was this cute little juice machine, and I swear to you, it had something that looked like the little dancer of Degas. It had this little thing that wiggled around, and the orange juice would go up and down. I thought, that is very cool. And so it was ultimately a compilation of those kinds of ideas that put together this work, which was really ruffles and poles. Next, please. This is a detail that gives you, it might be backwards, but it looks good anyway. This gives you a detail of what that color looked like. It was just so gorgeous and delicious, and I loved the way the color was. Next, please. This is not a great slide. Nonetheless, this is a piece that I just revisited. It's tiny. It's called Slash. And it was a maquette for a series of works I did in the 80s in which I was putting big sculptures on wheels. I had started to get backaches. Some of you who make sculpture know about backaches. And so I was thinking, okay, what if they were autonomous? What if they could walk? What if they could move themselves? Of course, an idiotic idea, but it was the source of the idea. And so this is a little maquette, but it has an edge to it because I think there's a detail, maybe. Next. And I wanted it also to have an edge, to have something somewhat unpleasant, thus the word slash. Next. I did a bunch of series, a series called For Beauty's Sake. It was when I started to get old. I've been old for a long time now, and it was when I began to get old, and I started seeing women doing everything to themselves, and men, and a part of me really wanted to do it too. But I was afraid. I was also indignant, confused, ambivalent. So I thought, okay, I'll do these. This is liposuction buttocks. That's a tussie up there, and that's a little teeny one after. Next. Yes, so, and this is from that same series. This is called, what is this called? Well, it's acne. This is also before and after. I have a friend who's an architect. He never knew the title of the work. It's resin, and the little zits are also resin. It's quite large. It's at least 4.5 feet high. He thought it was beautiful. A lot of these pieces, they are abstractions until you know what they are, until you hear the titles. And I've always felt that words and what the piece is saying is very important. It's important to me. And so this sort of edge, humor has been kind of my savior. I think it's how I've survived, and so a lot of my work is like that. Next, please. Later on, I can't tell if that's right either. Nonetheless, I started being fascinated with a subject that is still fascinating to me, which is the wet nurse. That is, for those of you who don't know, women who suckled other women's children, women who made their living, who supported their families by giving their breast milk to mostly upper-class babies. This is a milk fountain. It's tiny, it's wax, and the breast is a little, kind of skin-colored. I've done many pieces in this series, but I've only got 2 to show you. Next. And this is a milk fountain. That's a boob, if it's unclear. And this is called Expressing. It's plaster. And so there's the milk sort of at the bottom, splashing down at the bottom. It was a proposal for a milk fountain. I had this idea that it would be so great in a corporate lobby, but really big, and making gurgling sounds, like gurgling. This too has not come to pass, but I continue to be hopeful. I don't know if that's the last one or not. Is there another one? Oh, okay. So this, I think, is the most recent one I have. After For Beauty's Sake, and somewhere those, I can't remember the dates of the fountains, but after For Beauty's Sake, I got depressed because I got really old. And I started thinking, okay, that was funny, but this is no longer funny. What can I do? You know, how can I sort of get rid of these feelings I never have? I continue to try. But these are the wrinkles. These are called time signatures, a musical note. Time signatures, and they represent the wrinkles in the faces of older women. This was the final piece I did in the series. I took photographs or had someone photograph for me. I then projected images. I found the ones that were abstracted that I thought I could make into sculpture. They were laser cut. I then put them together. This is dichroic material on plexi. And this was the last piece I did in the series. I think it ended around 2017, 2016. And they are an homage to Lucy Lepard and Linda Nochlin, without whom I really don't think I would have been making the work that I made for the many, many years that I've been working, since they were so formidable. And this had an audio attached as well. And it was Linda and Lucy speaking. They were reading from early texts that they wrote when they, in fact, became feminists. I think that's it.
And Barbara, didn't you show this work in Philadelphia?
Did I?
Yeah, I remember. It was on the
One
corner
piece.
of
Yeah,
Pine-
yes, I did. I
No,
did. You're
you
right.
did.
At the Borowski Gallery. You're so good. Yes. And
I was there.
and I wanted the floor to be purple. And while for some of you, especially younger artists, for whom there are so few restraints, like the restraints that my colleagues have had, that we've had to overcome in a way, it was a big deal for me to make the floor purple. And it made the piece. It really made the piece. I think that might be the last one.
Yeah, I think that's good.
And that, okay, this was the back of my neck. That was the first one I did. If I can do my wrinkles, I can do anyone's wrinkles. So my neck is just disgusting. And so I had a friend who was a photographer, and he did the wrinkles in the back. Okay, and that's it. Thank you. Hold it. Wrong. So the most recent piece that I'm showing is, this is based on ancient Chinese hairdos that I had seen in ceramic sculpture in Paris at the Musée Guimet for many, many years. And I made little drawings and then big sort of lousy paintings on paper of them. They are they're plexiglass. Some are clear, some are black, and they were suspended. These were actual hairdos that Chinese women had, sort of royalty. And on my website, if you go and see it, I have Nina Simone singing "Black is the Color of My True Love's Hair" to accompany this piece. I think that's it.
I think that's it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So we now turn, those are the then, but as you can see, the then is still extremely pertinent now. But now we turn to the now and to Isa Matisse, who is a multidisciplinary artist whose work is currently focused on photography. Matisse's photo work serves as a key into their personal dreamscape as they explore themes of love, time, growth, and familial connection. Drawing inspiration from their surroundings and the people in their life, Matisse's photography captures both the beauty and complexity of the human experience. In addition to their artistic practice, Matisse also works as a curator for The Future Is Us, a collective focused on promoting meaningful engagement with the arts and collective healing. Through their work as a curator, Matisse continues to explore their interest in the transformative power of art and its potential to promote social change. And I just want to say that as you all came in, you walked through the galleries where the work of The Future of Us is located, and I know you'll go and take a look later as well. Would you like to do your own, or would you like me to move them? I can. Okay. She'll turn it on, yeah. No, don't touch anything. Just
talk
she's
into it.
controlling it from the back.
Okay. Okay, cool. Hi, my name is Isa Matisse. I am a curator, photographer, all-around artist. I work with a collective called The Future Is Us Collective. We were founded in 2016 by our founder, Laila Islam, who is pictured in this photo here, all the way on the right. We started in 2016, a group of like 8 high school students who just wanted a space that was safe for young POC and queer people. And yeah, much like the women on these panels, we just wanted a space where we were reflected in the works that were showcased on the walls, and also spaces that were just like super, I guess, a little more like free form, where you don't have to have like institutional experience in arts. So yeah, these are images from some of our first shows. This is our last show before COVID, our 9th installation, where we just had, I think we had about 20 artists, so it was our biggest show at that point. And yeah, and this is an image from our first show. And then, where do you point this? Okay. So in our later years, we focused a little more on specifically building spaces for young queer people. So these are images from our first drag show last March. That's also our founder, Laila Islam. And then these are some folks that came to hang out with us. And then this is another image from in our studio from a residency program that Laila facilitated that focused on utopic imaging and world building and sort of like how we can use art to imagine the world that we want to see. And I think that's all for my slides. Oh, and this is my personal work. My personal work sort of just focuses on capturing images of my friends and sort of telling stories through like other people's lenses. So yeah, that's me. Oh, and this is from our exhibition outside. There are a bunch of different artists. Curating this exhibition has been super fun. Yeah, I kind of talked about in my exhibition statement how a lot of these works are by different artists, but they all sort of reflect the same themes. And like I feel like you would think that these artists know each other, but for the most part they don't. And I did. I am the curator. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so our last artist is Wit López. who is internationally award-winning, multidisciplinary maker, performance artist, writer, and cultural advocate. And they live in Philadelphia, and they are the founder and artistic director of Till Arts Project, which Wit is going to talk about a little bit, a grassroots arts service organization serving LGBTQ+ creatives in the greater Philadelphia area. He's also one of the 12 inaugural Philadelphia Cultural Treasure Fellows. Their creative practice combines their skills their parents taught them, fiber art, painting, collage, and photography, and elements of their formal training in theater and classical music, including costuming, staging, and props. Their visual work and performance art uses their background in anthropology and Africana studies as a lens to examine, decolonize, and reconstruct aspects of their own identity. Wit, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. I told myself that I wasn't going to do anything weird, so I'm not going to do anything weird. I promise I will not do anything weird. So I made this in 2016, and I decided to go to stuff that I made kind of like recently, because that was like the first solo exhibition that I did that was fiber-based, but also based in like humor and nonsense and the idea of like using foolishness as an artistic medium. And so this piece is called You Mean I Can, and people were actually allowed to take it down out of that hammock, like take these balls down and throw them at each other, as part of the fun during the opening reception of the exhibition. There will be some in the gallery. Sorry, you can't throw them this time. I apologize. Maybe next time. But yeah, this was like my first foray into using fiber as a way to kind of connect people, but then also to like bring fun and joy into a space. So I thought it would be okay to kind of start with this piece in particular. And those are probably about the size of basketballs. This is a self-portrait that I made in 2020. It's called, I think it's red, yellow, green, purple. No, actually, it's not. I'm lying. It's called Trying to Keep a Straight Face, actually. And so self-portraiture is actually really important to me because I am a person that is visibly gender nonconforming, which often, people shun the way I look in a lot of different spaces, and they mistreat me. There are people who met me before I publicly decided to let people know that I was growing facial hair, which I've had since I was 16. And so it's like, that was like 22 years ago. So it's like, I decided to stop shaving it one day, and people that had met me before and were nice to me saw me and were like evil, absolutely evil. And so it's important for me to make self-portraiture that emphasizes the fact that yes, I do have facial hair, and yes, I do have breasts, and I don't care if you don't like it. Also, so this, sorry. So this background actually, and I'm really glad that Diane talked about like climate change and everything, because it's super important to me as well, especially as a fiber artist. A few years ago, I learned that 7% of the world's dumps and trash heaps is all like fibers and textiles. And so that was really like, that negatively impacted me a lot. I was like, what in the world? Like how is that? What is it that's making it up? And so I started taking pictures of fabric that I liked instead of actually using that fabric, and then creating pieces that could be reused over and over, like those yarn braids. Like I could put them back on, I could take them off, I can put them on the floor, I can do whatever. But also like the background of this are fabric, are pictures of fabric, so that I wouldn't be cutting up fabric and then throwing away scraps that would end up in dumps. Even though like most of it is cotton, it's also really important to not contribute to 7% of the world's trash. So this is just another image of like the pictures of fabric that I took and put together. And so I call these like digital quilts so that I don't have to cut up fabric and make more trash. This is just a picture of me doing nonsense, because why not? But I really love it. It's a collaborative piece, not just with me, but also like, so I reached out to an artist in California, and I asked her to contribute to my self-portraiture. And so she made a leather brooch of me that I could wear in the piece as well. So it was really nice and exciting. I absolutely love collaborating with other artists. It's super important to me to elevate their work, however they want their work elevated. This is a piece you'll actually see if you go into the gallery. This one's called Sir Cube Circus. It's also a digital quilt portrait. I took the picture of this artist, who is Ivan Felder. I had these pictures of fabric that are in the background, and then also like those circles on the top and like are things that I crocheted, and then like yarn that I used. The yarn that was used for that is like in the bottom as part of the design, and then more of the textile pictures just reshaped at the bottom. And it's part of this series of work. This part is called quilt top, which is like the top of the first layer of a quilt that you see that's designed. It's called a quilt top. So this is called the quilt top, and this is a series that I made that are all disabled and chronically ill artists from Philadelphia who have had difficulty showing their work historically, but then also during the pandemic couldn't show their work anywhere. And so I was invited to show work in Canada in 2021, and so I reached out to disabled and chronically ill artists in Philadelphia who couldn't show their workplaces, and I asked them to be a part of my work so that people could learn about them and then also get to see who they are, even though they couldn't travel themselves. It was really important for me to include people who don't always get included. This is something that I made recently. It's just, this is probably performance art, probably. So I first made a T-shirt that said that, and then I decided to make a billboard that said that, and it's just pretty much to bring joy to people's day because it's ridiculous, and performance art itself is ridiculous. So just wanted to make people laugh, and yeah. So this is actually, it's another type of digital, I guess kind of like an Afghan, that are pictures of crocheted granny squares that I made for an installation at Mainline Arts Center last year. But yeah, chronically ill artists and patrons deserve accessibility in all art spaces and programming. And it's honestly, it's just really important to me for people to have access, especially chronically ill and disabled individuals. But yeah, this was part of my installation there. So this is a hat that I made. It's actually, I made a series of hats that's like vaguely PBS inspired. So, you know, there was like one that was kind of vaguely Big Bird and another one that was like vaguely Carmen Sandiego. And this one is like vaguely Bob Ross, you know. So, the one that I'm wearing is like vaguely me. So, you know, just very weird. So this, I also like to use the idea of like creating, turning different things into art medium, like into mediums. So for me, like creating artistic residencies for other artists, especially artists that are usually underserved and underrepresented, is important to me. So I created this residency, I believe in 2018, called Taking Up Space in Residence, and it was for Black History Month. And so it was 30 Black LGBT artists from and around Philadelphia, and they all had a residency together for 2 weeks at the Icebox Project Space. And so for a lot of people, they said that it was their first time ever getting an artistic residency. And so they also were given, I think each of them were given like $300 for their own supplies and things like that. And then at the end, it ended with a community dinner that was catered also by a Black LGBT chef. This one I created, I think maybe 2020 or 2021, either one, I don't remember. But it's called the Oriana L. Lopez in Residence project. And so that was my sister who passed away in 2019 at the age of 37. And so she was also a chronically ill and disabled artist. And she was confined to an institution where she lived the last 3 years of her life before she passed. And so she made a lot of really amazing art while she was living in that institution, and people were buying so much art from her because they really loved it. But it showed, I mean, I've been ill my whole life, but it showed me what it's like for individuals who can't go outside, how they create art and how they need support from other people. And so I decided to create a residency during the pandemic for chronically ill artists who pretty much also could not be going outside for much. And so each artist got like a $500 stipend and supplies to do whatever they wanted to do while they were in their houses without having to go anywhere to do it. Oh, you put that? I was like, I don't know where this is from. Oh, thank you. Sure. So I did not submit this photo. So I love making zines, and most of the zines that I make are meant to be encouraging for artists, because I know sometimes being in the arts can be extremely discouraging, or there are people who just want to discourage you as an artist, which is really strange. So this one's called, first of all, primarily numero uno, and it's a love letter zine for you. So it's for artists just to pretty much tell them, like, you're important and the work that you do is important, but don't forget to take care of yourself first, because your mental health and your physical health are also important in this process. Setting boundaries in the arts, another zine, is super important. I think sometimes a lot of artists get discouraged because people cross their boundaries constantly. So it's a zine about like how to set boundaries safely for yourself, and also like when you're working with an institution. And then the last one, The Artist That Did, an encouragement zine, is pretty much about, it's a story about an artist who made art even though they felt like they couldn't. So it's kind of like based on the little engine that could. Yeah. So most of the zines that I make are meant to encourage other artists who are having difficulty with presenting their work or with seeing themselves as an artist, period. I like to make sure that people feel encouraged enough to actually see themselves as artists.
And I think that's the only one I put in.
Okay. I trust you. Till Arts. So Till Arts Project is, it's kind of like a grassroots organization. It's a fiscally sponsored project that started out of my art studio in 2016. And part of the reason why I started it was because I noticed how difficult it was for a lot of LGBTQ plus artists to break into the arts or to get their work noticed. And so, or to even just have supplies. So it kind of started as like a way to get people supplies and also to get people food. Because I noticed that some people would be like, well, I'm unemployed right now. And if you know the statistics around how high unemployment can be for LGBTQ plus people, unemployment, lack of housing insecurity, right, food insecurity, it's important for me to like meet the artists where they are and make sure that they are whole first before like, everything else. So people would pick between like, can I afford groceries right now or can I get art supplies? And so I try to cut that for folks so that they don't have to ask themselves that question. They can be like, hey, I need food and I need art supplies. So that's pretty much what I do through this. So like, there are weekends where I'm like running groceries to people's houses or getting supplies to young folks. And also through this, I've created 2 funds, the QT Noir Arts Fund, which is for Black LGBT artists in the city of Philadelphia, and also the En Comunidad Fund, Arts Fund, which is pretty much for Latin American artists, Latin American LGBT artists that are living in Philadelphia. And both of those give micro grants to artists based in Philadelphia. Additionally, through Till Arts, I've also done the QT Noir Arts Festival, which uplifts Black LGBT artists, not just in Philadelphia, but from all over, and but is based in Philadelphia so that Black LGBT artists in the city can have a safe place to enjoy the arts and performance. And I think that might be the last one. Yep, that's it.
Bravo.
Okay, so those are our presentations, and now I'm going to open it up for discussion among the artists, and I have a couple of questions for them, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So if we could have the lights back up, that would be really great. So while you're all preparing your questions or comments, my question to all of you, you're all absolutely wonderful artists, but you are not artists who stay in your studios. you know, you're artists who go out in the world, who are concerned with issues in your communities around you. You're involved with installations, with public art, with community activities. What I would be interested in learning, I hope everybody will be interested, how did you come to that? What was the occasion? What was something you read? What was something that you were thinking about that led you to become the artist that you are today, with this outlook that goes beyond the formal aspects of your art? So I open it up for discussion.
Well, I would just like to say I think Wit is a great example of someone whose whole career, I think, is exemplary, and that's what it's doing. But way back when, we didn't start that way. I don't know if any of us did. We all had, you know, a lot of us went to college, got our BFAs, MFAs, and there was a certain prescribed way that you had to practice, and it was in your studio to begin with, at least for me.
So what led you to think beyond?
Yeah, well, you know, you wake up and you look at the world around you, and there's more to life than just sitting in your studio and making art. You know, there's too much going on. I don't know. I couldn't make landscape paintings anymore, even though they sold very well. You know, there wasn't enough stimulus for me. I realized, I guess, in '06 was the big thing with Al Gore's movie, and climate change was in the air, and I just realized I had to do something other than make beautiful paintings about beautiful landscapes. I had to do something to hope they survive. And you know, the more I learned, the more I knew that I had to have a little bit more of a social practice. But I don't have a social practice like these two young women do. I don't, but I do a lot of public engagement in the environment and with educating through my art.
But I would also argue that this happened earlier in your career, and it happened perhaps when you went to the College Art Association meeting in 1972.
Well, that's a different kind of activism. Yes. Well,
that's what I'm looking for.
That's what you want me to talk about.
What is the thing that led you to think beyond, you know, the studio?
Well, issues that affect all of us. I mean, all of us women, for one, and it was the College Art Association where I woke up and realized, you know, things aren't really that equal. I went to a girls' school, so I didn't have that kind of an education that made me think I was being discriminated against, because we were all women.
But tell what the incident was, what the meeting.
And then I'm getting there. This is the way we react with each other.
I gotta give her her cues.
Okay, so I'm in this conference, and I met Cindy Nemser, who was a feminist art critic, and then I got into this room with all these art historians, and there was more than one artist there, right? But they were all female art historians bitching about the fact that everyone on the board were white old men, and yet 50% of the people who were taking art history and majoring in it were women. So there was something wrong there, and that was the beginning of the Women's Caucus of Art, and that made me wake up and learn a lot and think a lot. And then I heard about the Corcoran Conference in DC in '72. I missed getting there because I didn't know about it until after, but I went and I met Mary Beth Edelson and Rosemary Wright, and I found out what they did, and I came back to Philadelphia, not being a Philadelphian, but a New Yorker, and figuring out, well, we just got to do it here. And that's what started Focus and my relationship with Judy Brodsky, and here we are today. So that's my story, I guess.
Are you looking at me?
Yeah.
Yeah, AIR, Barbara.
So I do love being in my studio. And I am probably the least, outward reaching in literal terms that you can see. But for me, when the scales fell from my eyes in 1970, when it was impossible to ever close them again, when I realized what it had been my whole life to be a girl and then a woman, that was it. That was it. It was the New York Times that started talking about feminism. and my late friend Hermine Freed, who was married to the architect James Ingo Freed, had this huge fight, maybe about washing dishes, who knows? And I saw the world, I literally saw the world differently, and have seen it differently ever since. So for me, while I haven't done what you might say overtly political work or work that is attached to climate change or work like Joyce has done or you two are doing, I believe that art is a political action. It's a positive action. It's a way, it's a glue that holds us together. And so my politics really was helping other people as much as I could, like helping other women artists or art historians as much as I could, like introducing non-Western art in a university that had never heard of it. I mean, I had to introduce art history, art made by women, by hiring temporary art people, art historians and artists to teach at the University of Vermont. That was a real wake-up call. And so my work, while I think the focus is feminist, while the focus is on issues that people weren't thinking about, while it's funny, you know, there are many ways to be political. Mm-hmm. There are many ways to be out of your studio while you're in it. And so I guess that's what I would say.
Well, I would call a lot of your work involved with issues. For instance, the last pieces that you showed, the wrinkles. Who thinks of wrinkles? Who thinks of, yeah. But I mean, who thinks of making wrinkles into art so that people are aware of wrinkles in a way in which they've never thought about it before? Or your ones about milk and about mothers who donate their milk to others who...
The wrinkles are really just like everything in nature. They're fractals, the way, you've probably read about this, the way ice cracks on a lake. There are so many things, Wrinkles are a part of nature, and we are not appreciated once we have them. So I just kept trying to make things that were beautiful that we don't think of as beautiful. That in the realm of the wrinkles. So.
Right. So, Isa, could I ask you to talk a little bit about the founding of The Future Is Us?
So I guess the catalyst for me was definitely, well, I guess I didn't really have a big interest in art until our first exhibition, when I had work on the walls and I saw the response that people had to, like, I guess the stories that I was telling when I was in 9th grade. I guess throughout my time with the collective, I've learned a lot about, I guess, like the technical spaces or technical like jobs that come with like being an artist. I learned about curating and what it means to be a curator, what it means to like tell stories through other people's works on a wall. But yeah, I guess the catalyst for me was really just like wanting to see myself reflected in the spaces that I was in throughout high school, and also wanting that for younger queer people in my community.
Come on, Joyce.
Thank you.
I don't know what to, I'm addicted to groups. I've been in a lot of political groups in my life. I could start in Los Angeles in 1970. My husband got a job. I was a faculty wife with a toddler, and I was asked by another faculty wife to join a consciousness raising group. I didn't know what it was, but quickly got my consciousness raised and started to look around and see, the unequal situation of women and men. And then I was challenged by Miriam Shapiro, who all of you knew, to organize the Women Artists of Los Angeles. Well, I had just moved there, and I really didn't know any, but I was given a list, and I started calling them, and 65 women were crowded into my apartment, and they were very angry because they were left out of everything. And there was a big show opening at the one museum at the time in Los Angeles. And the catalog came out, and there was a grid on the cover. It was called Art and Technology. And there was a grid of like 50 heads. And they were all men. And almost all white men. And so we organized protests against the museum and made demands. And they met some of the demands. They were sort of scared because with it being in Hollywood, we had women who were working in the media, working in the movies, and we had a press conference and it got on the media. So some things started to change. And then I moved back to New York, and I worked in groups in New York, and I've been working in different kinds of groups ever since.
You've been leading a lot of groups, too. What about all the political, the posters, come on, the war, I mean, this
Yeah, I
woman's
mean, I like to
amazing.
work collectively. I don't,
Yeah,
you
you're
know,
a
I like to work
right,
collectively.
right, but people follow you even though you're part of a collective.
So my involvement in war in my work, I think, does come out of my life. And I, like other people my generation, the first demonstrations I participated were against the war in Vietnam, and those were formative years for me. And for me, I remember, you know, you'd see it on the news at night, and it became horrifying, the idea of war being the bombing of civilian populations, which goes on to this day. And so that's something I've tried to find some kind of visual language to talk about. I mean, you open the newspaper and you see the same picture. It could be anywhere in the world, but it's rubble, usually. It's usually the devastation. And I'm trying to look for what was there before the rubble.
No, Joyce, what you made me think about.
Didn't answer your question.
No, you did. You answered part of it. But I'm thinking about our generation, and when I got together with the women in Philadelphia for this focus thing, it was similar. A call went out, had a private meeting, then all of a sudden it was public, and I got letters from women as far as away as Washington, D.C. I don't know if they read the Philadelphia papers, but they were angry, and they wanted to be part. I'm an artist, and I would love to be part of this. Can you tell me more, blah, blah, blah. But the women that really helped organize all this, Judy and me and Judy Stein, who's in the audience, and Penny Buck and Ruth Fine, I don't know who else is here. We were all young artists, but we also were activists. Vietnam, anti-war activists. That was the milieu that we all grew up in. So that kind of fueled our passion to then put it towards the feminist movement.
Right. So Wit, your whole, as Diane said, your whole career has been focused on community and outreach. Is there a point at which you decided to make that your career?
It is. So my undergraduate degree is in anthropology and Africana studies from Bryn Mawr College. And part of my thesis was creating a kind of like archaeological exhibition about the African art collection at Bryn Mawr and how much of the provenance was missing, how much of there was not much research that was done about it. And so I created my own internship with some funding from the Mellon Foundation to do the research behind Bryn Mawr's African collection. And then I put them in a case, and along with a professor named Alice Lesnick, who I love dearly, and who was amazing at facilitating this. And the display panels had the names of things, or if the names weren't there because someone in special collections didn't do that research, the name was missing. So the display panels had a lot of empty spaces where things were, and kind of showed where erasure happened, or where just kind of deletion happened, or where there wasn't enough care or funding put into the African collection at the school. And that happens a lot to a lot of collections that belong to people of color communities around the world, especially when it's like archaeological work, right, or ethnographic kind of work. So it was really important for me to show that that research wasn't being done and that I did as much research as I could as a student who was like getting a foundation to fund my work. At the opening of that exhibition, a woman actually came up to me crying, someone who was like staff at the school but not in special collections. And she was like, why would they do this? And it was really difficult for me because while I was trying to expose what was wrong with the collection, she was concerned about why no one cared. And because she was a person of African descent, she felt it personally that that same care that doesn't go into African objects in a lot of museums, because it's not just Bryn Mawr, it's a lot of places that don't put that much care into their African collections. She felt it personally because she felt like it reflected her experience with not receiving care. And I took that to heart, and it was very important for me. And it helped me to turn a corner and like turn over a new leaf in how I wanted my work to be presented to the public. And so I started to like not focus as much on things that would show, I can't think of the word right now, but pretty much like the work that doesn't go into things, and instead deciding to put joy, community care first, to make sure that people are smiling and laughing and that my work doesn't make people cry at an opening reception. It was really important to me, and that was 2015 when I did that show. So that's part of the reason why my work centers community care. But the other side of that is because the statistics of how many LGBTQ plus people and disabled and chronically ill people don't have access to the arts. So the only way to do that is to actually meet them where they are and to actually listen. So like deep listening is a huge part of my practice as well, to make sure that I'm actually hearing what the artists in my community say they need. I'm not gonna be like, oh, you're dying of thirst? Yeah, here's a tube of paint and a paintbrush, you know, which I feel like happens to a lot of people sometimes. Instead, if somebody's like, I'm really thirsty, I give them a bottle of water. I don't tell them what I think they need. I give them what they actually ask me for. So yeah.
Is there another, yeah, there's a microphone up there.
Is that on? Yeah. What about me?
How about you?
What?
What do you think?
What I think is that I deeply admire people and artists who have focused their career or been part of some activism in the world in terms of it being part of the art they make. I've long held, I think it's a great thing that young artists, as my generation, we were in our studios with blinders on. And either I'm not the sharpest tack in the box, or I still have some blinders on, notwithstanding an interest in feminism and protesting and marches and writing letters and all of that. The heart of my work remains in my studio, and it always has. If it happens to overlap, it's fine, but it often doesn't. And the thing that I've found out in the time that I've been alive making art is that you really need to be true to yourself. And if you step out of that, the work doesn't resonate. This is all in your head about what that means. You know, I mean, I can put, for a while I was doing portraits of pets, and I was worried that I would be not taken seriously in the art world. But they were some of the most important work that I did to my heart. And they were like they were about friendship without being natural portraits. So when I know that I'm doing authentic work, then I can move ahead. When I try something because it should be done, it doesn't work. So I'm not I mean, I am an activist, you know, writing letters and all of that, but it doesn't overlap to my studio. I have a deep admiration for people that find that way in a genuine way, and especially for people who have been really left out, who are trying to find vehicles and methods outside of their studio in the community. I deeply admire that. I think if I were an artist going to school now, that might be it. I think this is a big difference between younger artists and my generation. You know, I'm my happiest if I'm just in a museum looking at a couple of pictures. That's what gives me the most thrill in life. Maybe movies too, but you know. So, you know.
Well, that's a good note to finish our discussion on that. And what I'd like to do in the last few minutes is open this up to the audience if some of you have comments or questions. Yes, right here. Wait a minute, we have a mic somewhere.
Oh, yes. Yes, and I will say we probably
It's
only have
coming-
time
it's
for
coming
maybe like
down the-
one or two very quick questions because we have words from the president at 5, so.
It's,
We
I
wanna-
have it at 5:05 right
Oh,
now.
5:05, okay.
9
So we
minutes.
have five,
Okay.
we have
Oh, great.
five,
Okay.
we have 5 minutes for
Okay, great.
questions.
Who is it?
There's a question right here.
Hi, my name is Sona. It's a pleasure to meet you all today. All of you, this question is for all of you and whoever can answer. You've spoken about how you've had this journey, right? All of you at different stages, some of you before the others. And it seems like you've had an activist phase, you've been an artist, and your art has transitioned. But what is the one thing you want to tell yourself that you didn't know? I know you said that make art that is true to your heart, right? Truly you. But what else? Like, what would you tell yourself? What would you go back and say to yourself so that you didn't have to go through some of the trials that you had to?
So what's the question?
My question is that you've had a long journey as an artist from being a beginner artist to where you are today. You've been an activist, right? You started as someone who did landscapes. Someone else, I think your art has evolved as well, right? Someone did photography, and now you are a different kind of artist, right? So then what would you tell yourself? What would you go back and tell yourself? Where is it that you would save yourself the time where you went through all these trials and tribulations to reach where you are right now? How would you have started differently if you had a chance to?
I think the question is, what would we have told ourselves back then with the
Back
knowledge
then-
we have now?
Yes, what have you learned?
good
How
question.
has that journey taught you?
We have time for probably one response.
Well, I'm not a big fan of evaluating old policies by the standards of now. It has to be taken in its time. So all of us made a number of mistakes, not considering a lot of people that now you think about it, how could we have done that? Well, we were in our culture. But for that, I mean, I don't make I don't make a great apology. It was the way it was.
In other words, no regrets.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there are some, but they're not pointed particularly in that direction of, oh, Jesus, I should have been doing this. I should have been, anyway.
Okay, so my regret is that we don't have any more time.
Right.
Okay, so what I want to do is suggest that maybe you can circulate a little bit as we go out for the reception. I hope you will all join us for the reception. You can talk to the artists some more. And also there are other artists in the audience whose work is on display. If you would just raise your hands so we can, stand up. Great. So please, thank you all for coming. Thank you, all of you on the stage, for all your insightful comments. And I hope that we'll all have a chance to talk some more outside.